Hello, everybody. Welcome to Sunday Night Ghost Stories on a Sunday, as nature intended. Not, as I said at the end of Friday's episode, we'll see you again on Monday, Sunday Night Ghost Stories Extra on a Monday. I don't know what I was thinking. Almost as if I had a beer in a bump. Anyway, here we are in the library. We've actually got the fire on tonight. We've actually got the heating element on because it's a little bit chilly in here tonight. Not only today, June the 7th, it's just grim out. It's raining outside. Lost more of my pumpkins, which have been eaten by the invertebrates. Anyway, what are we reading? We are reading the brilliant Ghost Stations. Absolutely solid book tonight. So what are we drinking tonight? Well, we're on a 2-drink strategy tonight. So the first one we're having is actually non-alcoholic, and it's Freeze Mix carbonated tamarind flavored drink. So there we go. Just doesn't say anything about it. Just having a quick look. No. Produced by Kasalti Chatra. We got this in the Indian supermarket in Bristol, so we'll give this a go. Like I say, non-alcoholic. It was only 50p as well. That's why we bought it. But we do have some of the coffee stout for later on. We are washing it down with the Western Gold honey, which is delicious. And I've suddenly realized that we've got some housekeeping to do, in as much as we haven't got the blurred background on. In fact, we can warm the room up a bit. That's more like it. Turn the blur on, and we'll turn the blur down a bit. That's a bit too intense. And there's another thing I've got to do, which is style. Go down to font. I wish it would keep the font. It's so annoying that I have to keep going back and changing it every time. Right. Let's crack on Mit the Ghost Stories, because the sooner I can crack on Mit the Ghost Stories, I can go downstairs and have some supper, because I'm dirt hungry. So let's just have a quick look to see how many pages have we got. Yeah, these are okay. So we'll reread this one from last time. The Haunted Hut. The Haunted Hut, Royal Air Force, Boscombe Down. In 1948, Bill Winkless was stationed at RAF Boscombe Down in Wiltshire, and there were many eerie tales told about the airfield. Boscombe Down first opened in 1917 as a training station, but soon after the end of the First World War, the airfield closed. But it reopened again in 1930, and at the outbreak of the Second World War, it housed numbers 88 and 218 squadrons with ferry battles. Throughout the war, the main role of the station was with the Aeroplane and Armament Experimental Establishment, and with other development units and research flights. There were many accidents, and in 1947, an airman was taken up on a flight, but the aircraft crashed, and everyone in the aircraft was killed. The night of the crash, the airman in Hut 19 in the bed next to the airman... the night of the crash, the airman in Hut 19, in the bed next to the airman who had been killed, was awakened by an ice-cold hand on his neck. When he sat up, he saw a hazy blue light hovering over the next bed and heard a voice saying he wanted his kit. This went on for some time, and in the end, the Psychic Research Unit was called in, and after investigation, they advised that Hut 19 be emptied and sealed up for 1 year. This was done, said Bill Winkless, and it reopened about the middle of September 1948. I'm just going to... I'm just splitting hairs here. The night of the crash, the airman in Hut 19, that should be an airman, not the airman. An airman in Hut 19, in the bed next to the airman who had been killed, was awakened by an ice-cold hand on his neck. Blah, 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 blah. Right, let's try some of this. Oops. I've got bookmarks falling out here. Let's try some of this tamarind. So Sainsbury bar. Very nice, very subtle. Not bad. I think I got that from the Chinese supermarket when I went there with Faye the other week. So, friend Faye. So, whom I'm hoping to see this week. So, anyway, the ghosts of Elsham Wold. In late January 1945, Corporal Hillary, a WAF MT driver of number 103 Squadron, was sent in a 15 CWT van to the dispersals on the far side of the airfield. Royal Air Force Elsham Wold in Lincolnshire had opened in July 1941 as a heavy bomber station, and from the outset housed number 103 Squadron, who first operated Wellingtons, then Halifaxes, and finally with Lancasters against a wide variety of long and short-range targets. It was a cold, bleak sight, and the squadron had many losses. Many accidents, some fatal, were caused by the ice and freezing fog that formed so often on the Lincolnshire wolds. On this particular day, it was thick fog, and Corporal Hillary had to drive with the van headlights full on. It was about midday, and Corporal Hillary soon became hopelessly lost out on the airfield. I got out of the van to try to locate my position, she said, and while standing in front of the van, I saw coming out of the fog in the van headlights 3 aircrew in full flying kit, sitcot, helmet, fly boots, etc. I thought that they were stranded, and I asked them the way, but they just walked past and disappeared into the fog. Corporal Hillary was shaken by this eerie incident, and by the time she had found her way back to the squadron, she was very upset. She told Stan Holtham about what she had seen, and she also told leading aircraft woman, LACW, Shirley Westrup, who was also an MT driver. She certainly looked as if she'd seen a ghost, said Shirley. The incident was very strange, for it was so foggy there was no flying on that particular day. Also, aircrew would not have been walking. So, was it a phantom aircrew? Was it a phantom crew that Corporal Hillary saw that foggy January morning in 1945? In 1947, the airfield closed, and today the roar of Merlin engines has changed to the roar of traffic. A new road that links the motorway to the Humber Bridge cuts right through the middle of the wartime airfield. But the new road cannot drive out the phantom airmen who still haunt the site of the old airfield. For many years, Mr. and Mrs. Gregory and their 5 children lived in the lonely wartime control tower at Elsham Wold. They heard mysterious Morse messages and saw phantom airmen walking around their home. In October 1976, Pat Otter and Brian Frith from the Grimsby Evening Telegraph went to interview the Gregorys. I'll try if I can get the voice. We didn't believe in this sort of thing, but we have to believe what we have seen with our own eyes, said Mrs. Gregory. The Gregorys' ghostly neighbours have been with them since they moved into the deserted control tower. Then Mr. Gregory got a job as a pigman with a local farmer. It was strange at first, said Mr. Gregory, but we have got used to it. They have never done us any harm, and there's no reason why they should hurt us now. The first experience of ghosts at Elsham Wold came shortly after they moved in. We heard a sort of tapping noise coming from behind this wall, said Mr. Gregory. The noise went on for months, and gradually the Gregorys realised that there was some pattern to the strange tapping. They looked into the empty room, on the other side of the dividing wall, but there was nothing but cobwebs and crumbling concrete. We got a lot of men who served here during the war coming back, and we told one of them about the noise. Sorry, we get a lot of men who served here in the war coming back, and we told one of them about the noise, said Mrs. Gregory. He said he had heard of this kind of thing before, and he thought it could be the last message from a bomber. He said the only way to stop the noise was to learn Morse code and to tap out a reply. Only when they got a reply would the crew of that aeroplane be satisfied. God, proofreading in this section is terrible. There's extra speech marks here when it's already in the middle of a quoted text. Anyway, the second apparition came one night shortly after the couple had gone to bed. I woke up with a start and saw this man standing at the bottom of the bed. He was smiling and wearing a blue jacket, white shirt and dark tie, said Mrs. Gregory. There was something about him which put me at ease. I wasn't frightened at all. We walked round to the side of the bed. He walked round to the side of the bed, but as I put my hand out, he smiled again and disappeared. Days later, the phantom airman appeared again, and this time it was Mr. Gregory who saw him. He was just sitting in a chair in the bedroom, smiling at me, said Mr. Gregory. Then he got up and vanished. Then he got up and just vanished. He must have been the same man my wife saw. He looked just the way she described him. The third incident happened not long after Mrs. Gregory was awakened one night by her son, Paul, screaming. When I went into his room, he was sitting up in bed, screaming his head off, she said. He said, "Can't you hear that plane? It's taking off and it's not coming back." Paul, who is now 13, went on to describe in great detail a 4-engine aircraft and its 7-man crew he had seen taking off from the old main runway, which is less than 100 yards from his bedroom window in the control tower. She went on. Paul still talks about it and the men he saw. It made a very vivid impression on him. In 1979, she went on. Paul still talks about it and the men he saw. It made a very vivid impression on him. In 1979, Mr. Gregory was talking to Robin Fletcher from the Humberside Aircraft Preservation Society. And during conversation, he told Robin Fletcher that one night his sons were upstairs in bed when they saw an airman in uniform walk across the room and go through a wall. Sometime later, when redecorating that room, Mr. Gregory stripped the wallpaper off and found a bricked up door at the point where the boys said they saw the phantom airman go through the wall. None of the Gregory family knew that there had once been a door at that spot, for the building had been renovated and decorated before they had moved in. Sadly, the old wartime control tower is due to be demolished. Today, when using the new road to the Humber Bridge from the M180, you follow the line of one of Elsham Wold's runways. On a foggy winter's night, one might meet the phantom air crews who still roam the old airfield site. I think that definitely deserves a... I think that definitely deserves a bump. Slange me bar. The haunted control tower at Elsham Wold's old bomber airfield, sadly now gone, but the ghosts remain and have been seen and heard where the old control tower once stood. So there we go. There's the old control tower, Elsham Wold's. Sorry, we got the blur effect on. You can't see it, but never mind. Oh my goodness, what are we up to? 16 minutes. Right. The Phantoms of Croydon. From a humble beginning in 1915, Croydon Aerodrome was accepted as being the London terminal, the Continental Airport, by the early 1920s. And by 1929, it was the busiest airport in Europe. Croydon became the home of Imperial Airways, later to become British Airways. And it also housed many great aircraft. Many famous names in aviation were linked with Croydon: Amy Johnson, Jim Mollison, Charles Kingford Smith, Bert Hinkler, and Jean Batten. With the coming of war, the Royal Air Force took over the airfield in 1939, and Croydon changed from a civil to a military airfield. It served as a fighter airfield for the defence of London. The first squadrons to arrive were number 615 with Gloucester Gladiators and numbers 3 and 17 with Hurricanes. Many other units were at Croydon, and these included the Canadians of number 1 Royal Canadian Air Force Squadron, Treble 1 Squadron, number 85 Squadron, number 72, number 414 Royal Canadian Air Force, and even 2 Polish squadrons, numbers 302 and 317. During the Battle of Britain, Croydon was heavily attacked, and there were many casualties among servicemen and civilians. In one 10-minute raid, much damage was done, and 6 airmen and 62 civilians were killed. After the war, Croydon resumed civilian flying, but by now its days as a major international airport were numbered, and in March 1946, Heathrow was designated London Airport. In September 1959, the last civil scheduled service left Croydon, and the world-famous airport closed. Today, the site of Croydon Aerodrome, where air transport began and during the war the target for German bombers, is a sprawling housing estate named Roundshaw Estate. To retain the last link, some of the roads have been given suitable aviation names, but there are other links, for the old airfield site is the scene too of hauntings by ghosts of RAF fighter pilots. There have been many sightings and even hearings. During the building of the huge complex of 1,800 homes, offices, factories, 4 schools, and shopping precincts in the late 60s and early 70s, there were many strange happenings. Workmen on the site reported hearing singing. Many people thought that the ghostly voices were those of the 62 killed in the bombing raid on the airport in 1940. There have been many other ghostly voices reported, and some have been heard in the old terminal building and control tower. These buildings having been converted into offices. Early one morning in 1971, a council workman was moving rubbish on the Roundshaw estate when he saw an airman on an old motorcycle coming towards him. The workman stood and looked in amazement as the rider swept by at full speed. The workman stood and looked in amazement, and as the rider swept by at full speed, he saw that he had no face. Legend has it that the faceless phantom motorcyclist was a Battle of Britain pilot who was killed when his fighter crashed at the end of the runway. Many of the fighter pilots owned motorcycles, and when not doing battle in the skies, it was a favourite pastime with them. Many people have reported seeing airmen in flying gear walking about the estate and on the pearly playing fields in broad daylight and at dusk. When people approached the airmen, they just disappeared. People living on the estate have unexplained visits, and in one house, one airman is said to visit and rearrange the furniture. The ghosts are thought to be those of 3 nuns who... I'll read that again. Also, many people have reported seeing the ghosts of 2 nuns, and at times 3 nuns walking the estate, and the ghost of a nun appeared so often in one house that the woman moved out. The ghosts are thought to be those of 3 nuns who were killed in January 1947. During a snowstorm, 2 aircraft crashed on the runway. 12 people died, including 3 nuns who were burnt to death while trying to help others escape. On Sunday, the 30th of September 1979, Bill Wood had great pleasure in helping to organise a special event to mark the 20th anniversary of Croydon's closure. He flew in a British Airways Jet Ranger helicopter from Gatwick Airport to Croydon, landed at the rear of the terminal building. He flew in a British, there's a comma here and it shouldn't be there. He flew in a British Airways Jet Ranger helicopter from Gatwick Airport to Croydon, landing at the rear of the terminal building just after 11 a.m. With Bill Wood in the helicopter was Sir Peter Chasefield, Bob Stanford Tuck, and a representative of the Royal Air Force Museum at London. The helicopter pilot was Captain Jack Cameron. A number of Croydon Airport Society members were awaiting their arrival, along with the local press, a policeman on duty, and interested visitors. In the crowd were the parents of Bill Wood, and next to them stood a gentleman in his 50s wearing a blue blazer with RAF woven badge. He was tall and thin with sandy hair, and he asked them to fill him in on what was happening. He also asked who was arriving in the helicopter, and as it touched down, he said, "Cheerio," and made towards the helicopter and promptly disappeared. Bill's family, along with other people, made their way to the helicopter and fully expected to see the man in the blue blazer in front of it, but there was no trace of him. What was so strange about this incident was the fact that the area was cordoned off, and there was no way for him to leave other than walk past Bill's family. Photographs were taken of the event, but they do not show the gentleman in the blue blazer. "I hope this gentleman will show himself at our next anniversary," says Bill Wood. Our society will be holding a walkabout, and I hope that this gentleman will make himself known to us. Bill is promotions officer for Croydon Airport Society, which was formed in 1979. The aim of the society is to keep alive memories of the airfield, and it looks like he has helped to do just that from the phantom band of lost travellers who await the final call. I do apologise. The beer yawns at 24 minutes and 43 seconds. It's been a long day. I was up at stupid this morning. Just couldn't sleep. Ended up listening to an entire Smirsh Pod episode, Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. God, I hate that film. And anyway, snatched me up. Oh, that's very nice, that freeze tamarind. Not bad. Slange. Got some fan mail. Let's read the fan mail. I can't read that out. Goodness me. It's made my hair turn white, and I haven't even got any hair. Right. The ghost of RAF Upavon. With the coming of the Second World War, AC2 Archie Pratt from Gravesend in Kent was recalled to the Royal Air Force Central Flying School at Upavon in Wiltshire as a reservist. RAF Upavon was one of the loneliest airfields in the United Kingdom, said Archie Pratt, who had been in the Royal Air Force from 1917 to 1923 and had served on many airfields. The airfield was situated on a hill above the village of Upavon, with the Avon Valley to the west. It had opened in 1912, and it was a very active airfield throughout the First World War, the main unit being the Central Flying School. In 1938, improvements were made and the station enlarged with 3 barrack blocks, a new Type C hangar, and many other buildings. I arrived in August 1939, said Pratt, and I was detailed for guard duties on my second day of arrival. AC2 Pratt was on the midnight watch, and fortunately for him, it was a clear moonlit night. I was really charmed with the clarity of the air, he said. For some of the time, he had been watching the odd train going through the valley with the big wartime blue lighting in the carriage windows and just a faint echo of the train drifting up. I was suddenly brought to life by heavy breathing, said Pratt, and a massive ball suddenly sloped into my vision, accompanied by the steamy smell that usually accompanies them. Pratt was taken aback by the sudden appearance of the ball, and it had caught him unawares, even though he was supposed to be on guard duty. I was glad of the light of the moon, said Pratt, and I greeted him with, "Hello, mate." At that, he charged the fence, almost touching me. Pratt made a quick getaway and explored a different area. After some 20 or 30 minutes, he approached another similar fence with another similar bull. He had evidently walked in a complete circle, but he was puzzled by the shadow of another RAF guard. This puzzled me, to say the least, said Pratt, for I had seen the other guard's shadow walk right across the bulk of the white bull. The moon was still in front of me, and the eerie, hazy figure was drenched in moonlight. Even so, I could not make him out for the eerie glow which surrounded the phantom figure. Suddenly, he vanished. Pratt decided he would be safer in the guard hut for a while and beat a hasty retreat for it. Over a mug of cocoa, he confided in the duty corporal what he believed he had seen. I think it should be what he believed he had seen, but proofreading. It was a ghost. It was a ghost, said Archie Pratt. The corporal grinned. You're not the first, he said, and I expect you will not be the last. Keep it to yourself. That's an order. Legend has it that the phantom hazy figure was a First World War pilot who was killed when his aeroplane crashed on a moonlit night in a nearby field. I didn't show you the photograph. The Phantom Rider, this speeding Spectre, was specially mounted for the Croydon advertisers. There we go. There's a photograph of supposedly the Phantom Ghost. I've just realised that we've we are the right way around. Or are we the right way around tonight? Yeah, we are the right way around. Left hand. It's been a long day, folks. Cheers, me beers. What are we up to? 29 minutes and 38 seconds. So I think we've got another short one. He said more than hope than expectation. The Ghost at Grove. In the late 1970s, the Metal Box Company took over the old wartime airfield of Grove in Oxfordshire for their research and development complex. Since then, sightings have been reported of a ghostly figure in full flying kit. Royal Air Force Grove is situated about a mile north of Wantage, and it opened in 1943 under Flying Training Command, but it had already been earmarked for the Americans. The US Air Force, should be US Army Air Force, moved in 1944 and remained until 1946. The airfield then returned to the RAF and was used as a relief landing ground and stores until about 1954, when it was then sold. The research and development complex is built on the old number 2 communal site of the old airfield. Since then, there have been rumours that the place is haunted. Late at night and in the early hours, a presence has been felt in a certain area at the rear of the works, and a ghostly figure clothed in flying gear, including an oxygen mask over the face, has been seen on more than one occasion at the establishment. Site plans show that the area where the ghost flyer has been seen is adjacent to the old wartime chapel at the site of the officers' mess. A popular theory is that the ghost flyer is a fighter pilot who crashed his aircraft on landing and was burnt to death. The sighting of the ghost flyer has fascinated the workers at the research and development complex, so much so that the company devoted half a page in Metal Box News, the company newspaper, posing the question, "Is Wantage haunted?" This brought forward a new theory that the ghost flyer was a local man killed when his Lancaster bomber crashed at Fifield. The Lancaster was en route for a target in Germany when it developed engine trouble, and in attempting an emergency landing at RAF Grove, it crashed and the bomb load exploded, killing all the crew. The crewman was Simmons, who came from Wantage. His father saw the Lancaster flying low over Clark's Mill where he worked and heard the crash. So here we have a photograph. The research and development complex of Metal Box at Grove, bottom left corner, is the former site of the officers' mess. Ghost scene in this area. The old buildings, bottom left of the photograph, are the wartime gymnasium and the chapel. So there we go. I don't know if you can see that. Probably can't. There we go. Yeah, does make sense. Well, half-time. What can we talk about half-time? Just seeing how long this story is. Oh, it's about 3 pages, but we'll... Oh, no, it's a nice short one. 2 and a bit pages. Right, let's finish off the freeze tamarind. Oh, lovely. Slange. Oh, lovely. So what are we drinking for the second part of tonight's show? It's our old friend, the coffee stout from Aldi. Absolutely amazeballs, this stuff. And I got a bottle of the chocolate stout as well. So good times, everybody, good times. Oh, lovely, 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 lovely. So what have we been up to tonight? Like I say, I was up at stupid this morning because I had chronic tinnitus and insomnia. And so I listened to a podcast, which was Smirsh Pod. And it was their episode about Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, a film I utterly loathe. And I love Indiana Jones. I didn't mind Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. I thought it was a good romp, and I enjoyed it. But Dial of Destiny, oh my goodness me, I just hated it. And I went with my good friend Jackie, and yeah, we came out the cinema, and she looked at me and she said, "Well, what do you think?" And I said, "I bleeping hated that. I just didn't like it. Okay, it was the 5th Indiana Jones film, set too close to modern times. It was set. Some of it was it was mostly set in the late 1960s." So technically speaking, it had moved forward in time with the distance of time from the first Raiders of the Lost Ark film, which was 1981, I do believe. Beer burps coming up, folks. 35 minutes and 27 seconds. So yeah, so if you kind of go back to the first Raiders film, 1981, so 1981, 81, 91, 2001, 2011, 2021, so 2021, 22, 23. So 42 years later, and Dial of Destiny is set 42 years later into the future. So it's, like I say, it's set in 1969, so it does touch upon the moon landings. But no, it just didn't work for me. And the fact that the first half hour of the film is actually set in 1940s Germany and features supposedly a de-aged Harrison Ford, who's just looks rubbery. It doesn't work for me. Just so much of the film just was off key. I just didn't like it. And it involved time travel, and I don't think it should involve time travel. I'm with John Rain at Smirsh Pod on this. I didn't mind Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, despite the fact that I had aliens in it. I could accept that. because it was directed by Spielberg, and he found a way of making you accept it. Dial of Destiny was directed by James Mangold, and he certainly mangled that film. He mangled it to nothing. So anyway, so that was my night last night of trying to get to sleep, listening to Smirch Pod. So thank you, John, and Dean, and Dan. So anyway, hang on. Look who's come to join us. What did you do on Sunday night? Well, I tuned in to watch Sunday Night Ghost Stories, but instead there was a confused man from Dudley with holes in his head, with a cat sat on his lap, and he was eating Thai rice chili snacks from Lidl. Which I got to say are delicious. So the other thing I did today was just some garden stuff. Reinforce the defences around my pumpkins and my beans, because the slugs and snails have been having a right old buffet there. And I've got more coming through at the moment. So I think sometimes you have to, I mean, I planted about 9 pumpkins. I'm down to 3 now. So I've still got some attritional ones growing in pots. So we will get round to replacing them at some stage. But yeah, what I did was I've got spent coir matting from my hanging baskets, really rough material. So I've put that around the base of the beans and the pumpkins, and hopefully it'll deter those invertebrate buggers. But what I should also try is getting some sheets of cheap coarse sandpaper, cutting them into little discs and putting them around the base of the plants as well. We'll try that. Anyway, got some fan mail. Oh God, I can't read that out. That's absolutely disgusting. I will also say that yesterday would have been my dear late younger sister Melanie, would have been her 56th birthday. She's been gone longer now than she was ever with us, which is a horrible statistic, but she is a constant inspiration to me. And if there's one thing I've learned in the near 30 years, it'll be 30 years this autumn that we lost her, is I live life on her behalf. So love you, Smeghead. Wish she was still here. So let's top up the beer. This is the coffee stout from Aldi, rich, dark and indulgent, brewed in the UK in partnership with Hall and Woodhouse, the well-known 80s pop duo. Rich, dark and indulgent with subtle coffee aromas, caramel and vanilla notes, complex, yet perfectly smooth, but doesn't actually contain coffee. Coffee flavoured beer. A couple more rice snacks. I think we'll carry on with part deux for tonight. So the Thamesford Shudder. Royal Air Force Thamesford, just 3 miles north of Sandy in Bedfordshire, was a top secret airfield during the last war. From Thamesford, special operations executive agents were dropped behind enemy lines. The airfield opened in 1941 under Number 3 Group, and the 2 main squadrons were Numbers 138 and 161. They carried out their cloak and dagger operations with Lysanders, Lockheed Hudsons, Whitleys, Halifaxes, and Stirlings. They remained for the duration of the war. All special operations executive operations all SOE operations were hazardous. A lone aircraft operating in total darkness in hostile country were always a problem and needed a special breed of men and women to work under such. Read that again. All SOE operations were hazardous. A lone aircraft operating in total darkness in hostile country was always a problem and needed a special breed of men and women to work under such pressures. While at Thamesford, Number 138 Squadron delivered almost 1,000 underground resistance agents with supply drops made almost 2,500 operational sorties with a loss of 70 aircraft. After the war, the airfield was transferred to Number 47 Group, and it housed a few flying units and Number 273 maintenance unit. But there was a gradual rundown of the airfield by the Royal Air Force, and in 1961, many of the wartime buildings were sold. 2 years later, most of the site was sold. Today, little remains of that historic airfield. However, the outline of the wartime runways are still easy to make out, and a good section of the southwest-northeast runway remains. There is still a footpath to the famous barn, and inside, the supply racks are still in place. This was the last place for many a secret agent. It is within this dilapidated brick and wood barn that a presence is felt, an authentic shudder and a freezing chill. Many people have felt it both inside the barn and in the area around it. Mr. and Mrs. Trotter are hard-headed people and by no means disposed to ghost hunting in the normal way, but they have certainly been impressed by the experiences thrust upon them while on the old Thamesford airfield. One person said he felt as if he was being watched. He had looked around in the drizzle and he stood wet and alone in the famous barn. Or so he thought. I suddenly went all cold and felt this shudder as if an aeroplane was taking off outside, he said. Another person suggested that anyone who wished to experience the authentic shudder should spend a night in a remote corner of the old airfield by the ruins of Gibraltar Farm or in the grounds of Hazel Hall, Everton, now derelict and formerly the residence of Francis Pym MP, or in the old barn. You will not get me there again, he said. Doesn't say who said that. Just going to see if I can find RAF Thamesford. Let's look that up and see if we can find a picture, a satellite shot of it. So RAF Thamesford. Google Maps. Oh my goodness me. Oh my goodness me. I am shocked to the core, ladies and gentlemen, because wow. Here we go. Share this on screen. Share screen, share screen, share screen. RAF Thamesford. So if you look, there we go, at that, you can clearly see where my mouse is going. That is the line of the runway there. And there is the line of another runway there. And that is the line of another runway there. So it's like a RAF. Yeah, isn't that amazing? That is RAF Tempsford 50 SOE Barn. RAF Tempsford SOE Barn. Oh, there it is. So I wonder if we can get a Google Earth view of that. Click on the link. Window, let's have a look. No, I don't think we can. Usually you can get it down there. Oh, there we go. No, it's not letting me do a Google Earth. Oh, that's a shame. Oh well. RAF Tempsford. We've put some flesh on that story. So cheers, me beers. Oh, delicious. Slange. Gosh, I've not had that coffee stout for a few weeks. And that is delicious. Right. The Phantoms of Fiskerton. The small complex of buildings which make up headquarters number 15 Group Royal Observer Corps is sited on one of the dispersals of the former wartime bomber base at Royal Air Force Fiskerton, just 5 miles east of Lincoln. RAF Fiskerton opened in January 1943 in number 5 Group Bomber Command, and it had the standard 3 concrete runways and other buildings on the technical and living site. The first squadron to occupy the new airfield was number 49, and they were equipped with Lancasters. They attacked many targets, including the ill-fated Nuremberg raid on the 30th to the 31st of March 1944, when the squadron sent 16 aircraft and lost 2. Other targets were Peenemünde and the V1 storage site. Number 49 Squadron departed in October 1944, and they were replaced by number 576 Squadron, which remained at Fiskerton until disbanding on September the 13th, 1945. Oh, the beer burps again, do apologise. They brought to an end the hectic life and final roar of Merlins at Fiskerton. The squadron had flown 2,788 operational sorties with a loss of 67 aircraft. Pretty good odds. Today, all is silent. Very little remains of the old airfield. The ROC site was the first purpose-built operations room. The site is made up of above-ground storage and administration buildings, and below ground the control room, the operational side of the business. It is in the latter where a positive sighting of a phantom airman has been made. One day, the secretary of the ROC had cause to visit the control room below ground, and whilst down there saw someone in full RAF officer's uniform, which is also worn by ROC officers, walking away from her down one of the corridors. The secretary naturally assumed it to be the deputy group commandant. The secretary naturally assumed it to be the deputy group commandant, and she addressed him, but received no reply. After having returned to her office above ground, she later mentioned to the deputy group commandant that she had seen him below ground and asked why he had not replied to her greeting. He looked puzzled at her remark and retorted that he found no reason to visit the below ground building and as such had not done so. What was so very strange about this incident was the fact that on the day that the Phantom Officer was sighted, only two persons were at headquarters. One lady, the secretary, and a gentleman, the deputy group commandant. To deepen the mystery even more so, the below ground site is very much restricted, and the aforementioned persons were the only two who would be able to gain access to the below ground building at that time. Other sightings have been made, but for security reasons, people have been told not to talk about the Phantom Officer. Other ghostly happenings on the old airfield have also been reported. The old control tower, now demolished, was said to be haunted, and voices were often heard at night, as if trying to locate a lost bomber. In the early 1970s, Mr. Norman Pepper of Newport, Lincoln, was learning to drive his friend's van on the old airfield. He had just been up and down a couple of times when suddenly he stopped, as if rooted to the spot, and rushing by like a great gust of wind came a Second World War Jeep. It was carrying a load of aircrew, all dressed in full flying kit. The Jeep passed the van and veered to the left around some boulders. The Jeep passed the van and veered to the left around some boulders. There was no sound coming from anywhere. "Did you see, Bob?" gasped Norman to his friend. With that, I nipped out of the van to see if I could see where they had gone, but there was no sign of the Jeep or its passengers. They had just disappeared. Incroyable. This is such a great book. It's such a great book, and yet the subsequent ones not quite so good. Yeah. Well, we'll read the other ones. I think we'll dip into them, but anyway, in the magnificent, let's get that lined up to the camera properly. In the magnificent Rush beer glass from viewers Kirsten and Steve in the United States. Cheers, me beers. Oh, that's lovely. Do you know what? I have been so focused on stories tonight that I hadn't realised on two instances. The first one, when we finished the Freeze Tamarind, I forgot that we've got a protocol, and that is our old dead soldier.
Oh, it's jolly nice of you. Hello, dead soldier. Seen plenty of those in my time.
It suddenly came to mind just now because we've just emptied the coffee stout. Another dead soldier. So run VT.
Oh, it's jolly nice of you. Hello, dead soldier. Seen plenty of those in my time.
In case you're wondering what that's from, it's from the 1960 film The League of Gentlemen, directed by Basil Dearden and starring Nigel Patrick, Jack Hopkins. No. Oh God, I've forgotten his bloody name now. I'm gonna have to look him up. Goes out of the ghost stories. League of Gentlemen. Jack Hawkins, of course it is. Jack Hawkins. Richard Attenborough, brilliant film. Brian Forbes, fabulous film. Right. The Ghosts of West Malling. With modified SE-5As and a Sopwith Dove, Kent Aeronautical Services made a brave start with commercial flying at West Malling in 1931. With the coming of war, the Royal Air Force took over the airfield, and the 1st Fighter Squadron, number 141, arrived in July 1940. During the Battle of Britain, West Malling was an advanced airfield for both Kenley and Biggin Hill. The airfield was bombed throughout August, September, and October 1940 and was badly damaged. Many fighter squadrons, which included Canadians and Americans, were housed at West Malling, and in 1944 the airfield became the main base for squadrons attacking the Doodlebugs. After the war, West Malling became the main rehabilitation centre for prisoners of war returning from Germany. Then a Spitfire squadron arrived, followed 2 weeks later by number 29 Squadron with Mosquitoes. For the next few years, West Malling had 3 resident squadrons flying first Mosquitoes and later Meteors. In the summer of 1954, national serviceman, leading aircraftsman Norman Skinner was stationed at RAF West Malling. At that time, the commanding officer was Group Captain Hamley, and the officers' mess anteroom had a pair of glazed French window-type doors leading to the outside. One particular evening, a group of officers were sitting in the anteroom talking, when suddenly one of them noticed a figure clad in 1940s-type flying gear peering in through the glass. "This figure was sighted many times," said Skinner, "and each time people rushed out to investigate, no one was ever found. The Phantom Airman was the subject of considerable barrack room conversation." In 1964, the airfield closed down, only to reopen the following year, and for 2 years housed a United States Navy facility flight. In 1970, Kent County Council bought the aerodrome and converted many of the brick buildings into offices. Today, the old wartime station is the location of the headquarters of Tunbridge and Malling District Council. The airfield is in a good state of preservation, and it is haunted by ghosts from those far-off wartime days. From 1979 until 1982, George Kimber was in charge of security at the old wartime West Malling airfield. There are 4 H blocks on the airfield, identical down to the last brick. One of these H blocks takes on a very strange atmosphere when one enters. Cleaners, council staff, and security guards all feel that there is someone walking alongside them when they are alone in the building. Turns page. "There is a presence," said one cleaner. "In the 3 years that I was in charge of security..." In the 3 years I was in charge of security at West Malling Airfield, the intruder alarms would activate in the early hours of the morning at least twice a week, said Mr. Kimber. Each time the building had to be searched in case of intruders, but no one was ever found. The alarms were often checked for faults, but none were ever found. Sorry, I've just lost where I was there for a second. The security guard had to do the search without a guard dog, as no dog would go any further than the door. The encounter with wartime phantom persons was frequent, said Kimber. There were 2 security guards on a shift, one in the control room, which during the war was a guard room, and the other guard on mobile patrol of the buildings and airfield. Many times the inside guard would call the outside guard up on the radio to check an airman would stand under a lamp to check an airman who would stand under a lamppost or walk past the guardhouse. For security reasons, the inside guard was not allowed to go out of the guardhouse until the mobile guard arrived. At no time did they find anyone. At that time, we never gave much attention to this until a new guard arrived, said Kimber. He was old enough to remember the war, and when he too saw the mystery airman, he pointed out the fact that he was wearing an old-time RAF uniform complete with gas mask. In 1981, when they were filming on the airfield for the We'll Meet Again television series, about 30 staff, actors, and film crew were standing by the control room waiting for a take, when the film director asked if the 2 airmen and the WAF, who were looking into the engine of a Jeep, could be moved out of shot. They were about 50 yards away. When one of the film crew approached them in full view of the cast, they disappeared. It was later found that the RAF personnel and vehicle had been seen before by staff. Another incident was with the Ghost Brick. The security patrol had a check key on a landing light pole, which they had to turn to prove they had visited the spot. The pole was in the middle of the airfield, with so many wide grass verges on either side and 2 perimeter runways. So any cover was a long way off, the distance being at least 3/4 of a mile on either side. But on 2 occasions, the security patrol van was hit by a house brick, making a large dent on the top of the van. "No way in the world could this have been thrown by human hands," said Mr. Kimber. "We tried throwing a house brick from the pole, but could not even get it off the grass verge." Sometime later, they learned that a Spitfire pilot crash-landed on the airfield, having cleared some trees and buildings, but was killed by a single brick which entered the cockpit after hitting a very low wall. Many of the people who live in the area claim that Merlin engines can be heard across the old wartime airfield, and as often as not when there is a full moon. And I think we definitely deserve a Oh, we got a nice couple of nice short ones here. I just got some fan mail turn. Let's just read the fan mail. See what the fan mail's got to say for itself. Oh, I can't read that out. That's absolutely... I'm shocked. No, I'm speechless with shock. What are we? 10:15. Sounds me right, buddy. We will wrap this up shortly. Oh. The ghosts of RAF Kelston. It is now silent at Kelston High on the Lincolnshire Wolds. Drops book. Try again. That's all right. The problem I've got is this book is so old that pages are literally, look, you can see pages are literally falling out of it. So, the ghosts of RAF Kelston. It is now silent at Kelston High on the Lincolnshire Wolds. During its wartime days, the sky was filled with the roar of Lancaster engines. Now only the wind can be heard. The wind and perhaps the drone of a Merlin engine or a lone piper. RAF Kelston was a very bleak sight, and it was used during the First World War as an emergency landing ground. It was brought into use again during the Second World War, and it opened in September 1943. Oh, the beer burps again, do apologise. As a heavy bomber station in number 1 Group Bomber Command. It housed number 625 Squadron, which formed at Kelston, and their Lancasters took part in all the major raids. In April 1945, number 625 Squadron moved out and the airfield closed. Its wartime days over. It was a brief but hectic life for this bleak airfield with primitive facilities. The site was returned to agriculture and most of the facilities were completely dismantled, leaving few traces of the former airfield. The only remains are the operations block, 1 small hangar-type workshop, 2 Nissan-type workshops, the electricity substation, some parts of the main runway, and a perimeter track. Over the years, there have been many stories from passing motorists who have been thumbed down by a mysterious airman wanting to go to RAF Kelston. One motorist who gave an airman a lift was asked to stop at Kelston, which was strange, for RAF Kelston closed in April 1945. The airman, carrying a kit bag, got out of the car and disappeared. Hardly surprising, as the camp had also long gone. The road from Binbrook to Louth, closed during the war, cuts right through the middle of the former wartime airfield. The road crosses the one-time main runway, and the former outlines are still visible. At a remote road junction just beyond the western perimeter of the site, a small monument has been erected in memory of the casualties suffered by the aircrew of number 625 Squadron. One cold, misty autumn morning in 1983, a motorist was driving past the deserted aerodrome on his way to Louth. Here again. One cold, misty autumn morning in 1983, a motorist was driving past the deserted aerodrome on his way to Louth when he suddenly saw a lone piper, fully attired in a kilt and sporran, playing a lament in front of the memorial. Was it a ghost? The motorist did not stop to find out. A spokesman from RAF Binbrook said it was no one from the camp and could shed no light whatsoever on the mystery of the lone piper. It is not possible to kill an airfield by taking down the buildings. As the mist rolls in across the former airfield, you cannot help but wonder what the tired crews thought as they returned from a mission to such airfields as this. Many people have reported hearing Merlin engines. Many people have reported hearing Merlin engines while on the old runway. This is usually heard when misty, and it appears to be trying to land. Oh, we've just had a quick swig of the old beer. Now, this next one, I get the funny feeling. No, we'll do this next one. I am just conscious of the fact that I am hungry, and I'm a little bit pooped because, like I say, didn't get much sleep last night. I was up at stupid in the morning. I had a full day in the garden. So right. In the magnificent United Federation of Planet shot class, again, courtesy of viewers Kirsten and Steve in the United States. Had a lovely chat with Kirsten last week, talking about her lovely sister Karen, who we lost 8 years ago on that day. So, slange me bar. Oh, lovely. Do you know what? We're going to top that one up. It's a 3-bump night, but what the hell? That'll help me sleep. Oh, God, how much of the Western Gold honey have we got left? Only got that much left. Billy Lindholm and the Jigsaw Ghost. During 1941 and 1942, leading aircraftman Bernard Feasy was stationed at RAF Lindholm in Yorkshire, and one of his duties was as a crash guard. It was a very gruesome job and gave many of them nightmares. It was a rotten job, said Feasy. One morning, a sergeant fitter fancied his chances as a pilot and took up a Wellington bomber. He must have done a wobbly, for he came sharp down on the marshy ground to the rear of our H Block barracks. We dragged him out dead. He was cut in two and only held together with the trouser part of his flying suit. Feasy added, certainly no bodies were left. He was alone. It was sometime after that a ghost airman appeared on the airfield, and because he seemed to move in two parts, was nicknamed the Jigsaw Ghost. RAF Lindholm opened in 1940 as a bomber airfield, and the first squadron was number 50, flying Hamdens. Then came the Canadians with number 408 Squadron, and the Poles with numbers 304 and 305 squadrons with Wellington bombers. The Polish squadrons attacked many enemy targets, and they had many losses. The Polish commanding officer, Group Captain Skaczynski was lost after his Wellington ditched in the sea after a raid on Bremen in June 1942. From the end of 1942, the station housed a heavy conversion unit with 4-engined heavy bombers, and it remained in this role for the duration of the war. There were many bad crashes. On one day alone, 20th of November 1944, the HCU lost 3 bombers. Halifax BB-254 crashed at 20:53 hours at Dunscroft near Doncaster. 5 were killed and 2 injured. Only minutes later at 21:05 hours, Halifax HR-794 failed to gain height on takeoff and crashed at the end of the runway. At 2200 hours, Halifax W7875 crashed at Lings Farm near Dunsville, Doncaster, killing 6. Lindholm remained open after the war with some Lincoln squadrons. In the 1950s, the Bomber Command Bombing School arrived, and it remained until the station closed in 1972. Other units were Number 5 Air Navigation School and the Station Flight. In 1955, Corporal Alan Cram was posted to Lindholm, and he worked on the Station Flight as an airframe fitter. Being single at the time, he lived in an H block on the road opposite the Corporal's Club. He had a separate room at the end of a room which housed about 20 airmen. The block had 4 similar rooms upstairs as well as 4 downstairs. One night in October 1955, Corporal Cram was woken about 3 a.m. All hell had let loose upstairs, yelling, screaming, and very quickly all the block was wide awake. I got out of bed and rushed upstairs to investigate, said Cram. I arrived to find some very upset airmen. Cram added, the room was flooded with moonlight and I felt strange. The reason for the commotion was that one airman had stirred around 3 a.m. and lying on his back, opened his eyes and saw the figure of an airman in full flying kit, complete with helmet, standing in the moonlight in the centre of the room. The young lad just lay in bed, petrified. I blinked my eyes a few times, but the figure still remained. Then someone screamed and the figure disappeared. It was a couple of hours before the H block rested again. The next day, there was a lot of discussion about the incident. A few days later, I'm going to have a quick swig of the old beer. Slange me bar. Oh, lovely. A few days later, Corporal Cram was having a drink in the Robin Hood in Hatfield Woodhouse, and during conversation with some of the locals, he mentioned the incident of the Phantom Airman in flying gear. One man told him that in late 1941, a Wellington bomber crashed after returning from a bombing raid. Legend has it that the Wellington had been attacked by a German fighter and was badly damaged. It also almost made it back, but about a mile from the runway, it crashed into desolate swampland known as the Lindholm Bog. All the Polish crew were killed except for the badly wounded pilot, who was said to have staggered back and fell dead on the entrance to the sergeant's mess. The aircraft sank into the bog and was not found. The story intrigued me, said Cram, and at that time I worked on the airfield which bordered on the perimeter, near which was marshland that stretched for miles. In the summer it gave off a terrible stench, and at night there was a mist over the area about 10 feet high, which looked very eerie with the rest of the airfield clear. Trees and shrubs grew in the swamp. Cram added, I spent many hours searching for that Wellington bomber, but to no avail. I was told that the aircraft sometimes stood proud of the surface, depending on the weather. Rumours were the crew were still on board. This proved to be correct, for in the early 1970s, the swamp was drained. and a Wellington bomber was discovered about 30 feet below the marsh. The crew were still on board, and their remains were buried in Lindholm churchyard. Between 1943 and 1970, many people reported, there's an errant comma here, between 1943 and 1970, many people reported that an airman in mud-stained flying clothing had approached them and asked the way to either sick quarters or the operations room. It was always at night time, and before anyone could ask any questions, the figure always disappeared. However, since the funeral of the crew, the mud-stained airman has never returned. Was there a crew member missing? And was it Billy Lindholm's crashed bomber that was found? Also, what of the Jigsaw ghost? Oh, we are going to rack up the copyright violations tonight on Facebook, despite the fact we are using royalty-free sound effects. Honestly, Facebook, don't worry about that. Do something about the racism and the hate speech and all the other things I've had to report in the last 24 hours. Not my bloody sound effects, really. Anyway, where we come up to, 1 hour and 18 minutes. We're going to knock it off in a minute. So, in fact, this is the perfect one to finish on. So, Sandeman's ghost. Towards the end of the last war, Sid Frogley, Sid spelled S-Y-D, was posted to Royal Air Force Aldergrove in Antrim, Northern Ireland. The airfield dated back to 1918 and during the Second World War housed many Coastal Command squadrons. Their duties were convoy patrols and anti-submarine patrols, and many U-boats were sunk by Aldergrove squadrons. The station also housed number 23 maintenance unit, and it handled many different types of aircraft. Sid Frogley worked in the meteorological branch and was attached to an upper air unit. 4 times a day, they used to release a hydrogen-filled balloon and follow it up with radar. 4 times a day, they used to release a hydrogen balloon and follow it with radar up to 60 to 70,000 feet, tracking the winds at different levels as well as pressure, temperature, and humidity. I remember one 3 a.m. balloon ascent when a colleague and myself endeavoured to start the diesel generator to power the radar, recalls Frogley. It was a clear moonlit night, and as we were swinging the diesel engine, we noticed a tall figure some 15 to 20 yards away. It was hard work swinging the engine, and they called for assistance, thinking it was an RAF regiment security patrol, but the figure took no notice. After a few more minutes, Frogley stopped swinging the diesel engine and approached the figure. As I got nearer, I saw that he was dressed in a cloak and a tall, wide-brimmed hat, said Frogley. I halted for a few moments. Then as I moved forward again, he just disappeared. Frogley and his colleague had witnessed the whole incident. Frogley and his colleague who had witnessed the whole incident were very puzzled. The phantom appeared many times, and he became known in the upper air unit as Sandeman's ghost, since he resembled the cloaked figure on Sandeman Port adverts. Frogley and his colleague made inquiries, and the local postmaster told him that there had been a coach hold-up at that spot many years ago, and there had been a brutal killing. The ghost they saw at the upper air unit at RAF Aldergrove was thought to be that of the highwayman, recalls Frogley. Sandeman's ghost was a popular figure in those days. In the early 1960s, RAF Aldergrove became Belfast Airport, and the old wartime buildings were replaced by a modern terminal. In so doing, did they bulldoze away Sandeman's ghost? Or can the Don still be seen amongst the million passengers who pass through the airport each year? Here we go. There is the Sandeman Port figure. Do you know what? Now that I've read that, I have the urge to go out and buy a bottle of Sandeman's Port. Oh, the beer burps. Do apologise. Right. That's it for tonight, folks. Oh, cheers. Oh, lovely. Slange. Oh, lovelier. Right, that's it. Sunday Night Ghost Stories has come to a finish for tonight. Fingers crossed, we'll be back on Wednesday for, brace yourselves, Sunday Night Ghost Stories Extra. Now, hopefully I might be in Topsham in Devon tomorrow. I've got the day off. So I'm going to go to the Topsham bookshop and see if they've got any ghost story books. I'm hoping they have. So until the next time, it behoves me to say thank you for watching. Why not? What else are you going to do on a Sunday night on the 7th of June, 2026, and watch a confused man from Dudley with holes in his head, drink ghost stories and read alcohol? So until the next time, as ever, thank you for watching. Stay safe. Stay out of trouble. Please don't have nightmares. Good night.